welcome to another episode of Forno and Forum. My name is Mac Garofalo. I am your host, and today we have a very, very special episode for you. You guys are getting a 3-for-1. We're doing our polpette episode today, but we're not just focusing on meatballs. We're doing polpette con carne, polpette melanzane, and polpette con riso. So 3 types: rice, meat, and eggplant. The base recipes for all of these are pretty much the same. The one variant, obviously, is the main ingredient, so the rice, the meat, or the eggplant. And then the other little variant is that the meat and the eggplant use parsley, while the rice ball does not. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into our recipe here real quick. So behind me we have the main ingredients. We've got our rice, our eggplant, and our ground beef. And going into the rice is going to be a ½ cup of freshly grated Parmesan cheese. Again, if you don't have freshly grated, just make sure you have ½ cup of Parmesan cheese. A teaspoon of pepper, a teaspoon of salt, 1 garlic clove, 2 eggs, and then eventually a ¼ cup of breadcrumbs. And it is the same exact ratios for the eggplant and the ground beef. The only variance is that the eggplant and ground beef are using a ¼ cup of parsley within the mixture as well. Everything else remains the same. So I can go ahead and start mixing here, but before I do that, I'm going to get the oil heated up. And then by the time everything is mixed up, this should be a proper temperature. As far as the oil, we're using the same oil that we used in the zucchini flour episode, which is just basic corn oil. You want enough to cover the bottom. You want the oil to come up maybe about halfway, 3/4 on each ball. This way, you know, the majority of the ball is frying for when you flip it, so it speeds up the time for you. All right, so we're going to start with our eggs, and we're going to start with the rice just because it's the closest one for right now. Yeah, the rice patties are probably one of my favorite things that my mom used to make for us when we were growing up. She still makes them today. It's always been a really tasty snack, and it goes good as a nice side with dinner, or just a snack on its own in general. All right, so we've got our 2 eggs in there. And then you've got a couple of options with the eggs. You can either mix them in the bowl directly, or you can beat them ahead of time. It's really your preference. Doesn't really impact it that much. In here, we've got our black pepper, our salt, and our Parmesan cheese, and our garlic. Again, the Parmesan is freshly grated. If you don't have that, that's fine. And the garlic is it's 1 garlic clove finely chopped. If you don't have garlic clove, garlic powder is fine, but fresh is always better. All right, get that nicely incorporated into the bowl here. All right, and then we're going to start mixing this up. And then once it's nice and incorporated with the egg and the garlic and the pepper and the salt, that's when we'll add in our breadcrumb as a final binder for the entire mixture. And then the rice, what I recommend is just use your basic, white rice. Follow the directions on the package as far as prepping your rice. And then you want to do this far enough in advance so that the rice has time to cool, because you don't want to be working with the warm rice. Okay, this is just about at the right mixture where I want to add in the breadcrumbs for binding. And then I didn't show it yet, but off to the side over here I've got some breadcrumbs to roll the meat, rice, and eggplant balls inside of. Not a specific measurement for that, just make sure you have enough to do the rolling. Okay, and then this is what you're looking for in terms of mixture for the rice before you add in the breadcrumbs. And then once you add in the breadcrumbs, at this point, if you choose to, you can mix with your hands. But since I am going from one thing to the other and I don't want to mess up the fork, I'm going to continue mixing with the fork. And then, like always, if you're unsure about the seasoning, once you make this once, if you feel like you want to add more salt, more garlic, more pepper, by all means, go ahead. And obviously this is just a small recipe. My mom used to make this in larger quantities when we were growing up, but for the purposes of the video and the recipe here, we kind of downsized it a little bit. And it's an easy recipe to double. Just, you know, add an extra egg, add some more Parmesan cheese, nothing too crazy. I think I sabotaged myself here. A piece of rice fell into the frying pan. Hopefully it doesn't pop up into my eye. That would be very, very unpleasant. All right, so the mixture for the rice balls is nice and mixed. And then we're gonna move on to the eggplant. And for both the rice and the eggplant, I didn't film the preparation in advance because we're already doing 3 recipes in this video and I didn't want the video to be like forever long for you. So like I mentioned, what we did for the rice, follow the directions on the package to prep the rice, allow enough time for the rice to be drained and so that it can cool. Similar concept with the eggplant. Just peel the eggplant, slice it into discs, and then put it into boiling water with some salt for about 5-10 minutes so it can get soft. And then strain the excess liquid from the eggplant because you don't want all that moisture in there. And then again, you want to allow enough time for the eggplant to cool off so it's easier to work with. And the time also allows the excess water to drain out. So we're going to mash the eggplant first before we add in our ingredients for the actual balls here. I'm going to get the rice out of the way so I have a little bit more space to work. So you can use a potato masher, a big fork to get the eggplants all mashed up. And then if you have, eggplants in your garden, by all means, that's going to be way tastier. This I got it at a local grocery store. Potato masher works a little bit better, but I don't have one handy. Now, this is not one that my mom has made often, but my aunts in Italy have made various different types of polpette. They've made riso, they've made melanzane, which is the eggplant. They've made carne, which is the meat. My aunt has also made one out of it's not exactly it's somewhere between a pumpkin and a squash. I know a pumpkin is a squash, but it's closer to pumpkin in color than it is like a general yellow squash. That one was very, very tasty. I was a big fan of that one. So was my girlfriend. She really liked the pumpkin one. I've slowly become a fan of the eggplant ones. Those are really tasty. Okay, this isn't taking too long to mash up. It was nice and soft and tender. Again, like I mentioned, you just want to do the eggplant far enough in advance so that it gets nice and soft and it's cool and easy to work with. Sometimes you might have to bring some of the slices from the bottom to the top just so they can get properly incorporated. And if you hear anybody in the background, it's going to be one of 3 people. It's either going to be my dog Charlie, who's whining that he wants to go play outside with other dogs, or it's going to be my mom or dad. They are currently enjoying some lunch at the moment. I believe they're having a tomato salad, which we've featured that recipe here on the channel before. And a lot of the recipes that you'll see on the channel are inspired from things that my mom has made for us growing up. There'll be some recipes that you'll see that really haven't been like a family recipe or anything like that, but I still enjoy to make. Okay, so we've got the eggplant pretty nice and mashed up. I'm going to bring this closer for you so you can kind of see the consistency that you're going for. And there's probably a little bit too much liquid in here as it is right now, but you're looking to get it all nice and mashed up. Okay. All right. These guys, considering the consistency, I'm going to actually do this guy with my hands. But again, it's the same base recipe. It's 2 eggs. This guy wants to break. There we go. 2 eggs. 2 leaves of parsley that got stuck on the egg. Okay. And then again, it's the half a cup of Parmesan cheese. In this case, it's the teaspoon of salt, teaspoon of black pepper, 1 garlic clove, and a 1/4 cup of garden fresh parsley. Obviously, you may not have garden fresh parsley, but if you can find parsley at your local grocery store, that'll be just fine. Okay, get this guy in there. All right. All right, we'll get this guy nice and mixed up. That is the fire alarm, which is great. That's the fun part of filming, is you're always going to have some kind of variable that decides to pop up for you. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of the fire alarm and get everything else mixed up, and I'll be right back. Welcome back. We've got our smoke alarm taken care of. When I started heating up the oil, I forgot to lower the temperature and left it on high, which created some fun smoke, and that's what triggered our smoke alarm. So that was fun. We've got that taken care of. I was able to finish mixing up the eggplant. Just a little note here. Probably could have drained a little bit more liquid out of the eggplant, so keep that in mind. I ended up having to add in a little extra breadcrumb to compensate for the additional liquid to kind of sop that up. So just keep that in mind. Make sure you drain as much liquid out of the eggplant as possible after it's been boiled. That'll make an easier texture to work with, and it'll make it easier for you to bind, and you'll have to use less breadcrumbs. So I'm going to keep the breadcrumb ratio the same, but if you feel as you're mixing your eggplant mixture that you have to add more breadcrumbs, by all means go ahead and do so. Now we're going to move on to the meat, which is probably what most folks are most familiar with when it comes to polpette. A lot of folks probably haven't had Polpette di Melanzane or Polpette di Riso. Closest thing that most folks might have had with the riso part of it is arancini, which is a little bit different than what we're doing today. Arancini will sometimes have cheese stuffed inside, or meat, or peas, or various other things, and it's usually served with like a sauce base. These are just little appetizers, essentially. All right, so we're going to move on to the ground beef. And then sometimes with the actual polpette di carne, sometimes folks will do a mixture of beef and pork. It's really up to you and what you prefer. You can do just beef, you can do just pork, or you can do the combination. Sometimes folks will have fun and do a different type of protein. You could probably do venison meatballs if you are the type of person that hunts, or you could do bison, all kinds of stuff. It really depends on what type of meat you prefer. Doing ground beef today because that's what we had in the freezer, and that's what we're working with. Same basic recipe as the other polpette. A teaspoon of salt, teaspoon of black pepper, 1 fresh garlic clove, and half a cup of freshly grated Parmesan. And similar to the melanzane, it's a 1/4 cup of garden fresh parsley, roughly chopped. Okay. I probably should have got myself a bigger bowl for the ground beef. This is probably going to end up being a little messy, but that's all right. It's the nature of the beef as far as cooking. Messes will happen, like, you know, setting the smoke alarm off by having the oil get too hot. And then similar process to the rice and the eggplant. As the base ingredients get incorporated, then we will add in the breadcrumbs as a binder. And then we're going to be getting into making the actual polpette soon, and so I'll just kind of share this tip right now. My mom has always kind of done this. She has a little bowl of room temperature water or cold water next to her workstation that she uses to dip her hands to kind of keep things from getting too sticky as she's making the various polpette. Because you'll notice once you start making the actual balls with your hands that they're going to get sticky, and it's going to get harder and harder to make them nicely. And again, like all of our recipes, like I said, if you make these, if you make all three, or if you just make one or two, give it a taste once you're done with it. Well, not taste it raw, but I'm saying once you've made the recipe, you know, if you try it and you think, oh, I need a little bit more salt or a little bit more garlic, by all means make that adjustment. Or if you want to reduce the amount of salt, by all means. Okay. Surprised Charlie hasn't paid us a visit. He probably won't pay us a visit any longer. He's kind of a scaredy cat when it comes to dogs. He does not like the smoke alarm. He is now cowering in the front room with my mom, because he's, you know, big tough animal, right? He hates, the only thing he hates more than the smoke alarm is equal hatred of thunder and fireworks. And I can empathize with him on the fireworks, because when I was a kid, I was terrified of fireworks, which was a fun time. All right, now we're ready for our breadcrumbs. And again, this is about quarter cup of breadcrumbs. Unseasoned. I know sometimes when you go to the store, you'll find seasoned breadcrumbs. No need for that, because you're providing the rest of the seasoning on your own. Okay, considering the tight quarters, I'm going to finish mixing this guy with my hands. The fork isn't quite getting it done, just due to the size of the bowl. And don't be afraid to get in there with your hands and mix this guy up. You don't want to overwork it. You want to get all the ingredients and everything nicely incorporated. Okay. 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 And this is what you're looking at after you've got the ground beef nice and mixed with your ingredients. It's kind of got the consistency of a big hamburger patty, to give you an idea of what you're looking for. Okay. I'm going to clean up this little area here real quick, and then we'll get to frying. Okay, I'm going to wash my hands too, just so I can start off with some clean hands, because they're going to get sticky as we're moving along here in the process. I'm going to get myself a water dish just to periodically rinse out my hands, just so I don't have to double back to the sink every time to clean them off. Okay, so that's my my rinsing dish. I've got the breadcrumbs to roll the polpette in, and then I've got my various mixtures over here. Now, my mom typically makes the polpette di riso in kind of like a torpedo shape. These are going to be a round ball type, kind of like your standard meatball. Okay. And we don't want to make these too big. And we're going to try and keep the size roughly the same for the polpette di carne, riso, and the melanzane. Okay, this is what we're looking at in terms of size. You're kind of looking like a little smaller than a golf ball, roughly around there. Okay, roll it in the breadcrumbs. This acts as kind of like an additional last line of defense in terms of a binder, but it also makes a nice crust. Okay, we'll do a little of the eggplant. This one I went a little bit bigger than I wanted to, but it's not going to create any sort of a problem here. Okay. I'm doing one of each just so you can kind of see the finished product for each of them, and then we'll go ahead and fry up the rest of them. Okay. Okay. Now the polpette di carne, it's kind of like a versatile recipe when it comes to Italian cooking. You can make it as kind of like like an appetizer, which is what I'm doing here, where it's just, you know, just the meat fried. It's not going to be in sauce. But you can also par fry the polpette di carne and then finish them off the rest of the way in your sauce. And the link for the sauce recipe is going to be below. Just so you can kind of use that if you wanted to with the meatballs. If you wanted to, with the polpette di riso and the polpette di melanzane, you could serve that with like a side of sauce too if you wanted, as kind of the dip in, but they're perfectly fine on their own. And I said you could serve these 3 types of polpette as an appetizer if you're having friends over for like a Sunday brunch or something like that, or if you're having folks over for dinner on a Friday or after work or on a Saturday. You know, if you're working on your main meal like the Veal Costantina, which will be down in the description as well, you can have these guys as a little appetizer while everything else is cooking, or you can have them as a side. And like I mentioned, you can also put the polpette di carne in your sauce as a little bit of extra, you know, make it a little extra heartier sauce. Okay, we're getting close to being able to turn these guys here. It shouldn't take too long. That's kind of why you want that level of oil that I suggested, because that will allow about 3/4 of the polpette to fry before it turns, so that once it's turned, you only need to fry up the remaining quarter and it shouldn't take you too long. So that was actually the first time I've set off the smoke alarm with just a pan of oil and not something else involved in the process. I regularly set that off, the smoke alarm, with when I'm making my cast iron skillet steaks, which is why I was very surprised that when I made the cast iron skillet steaks for you guys that did not set off the smoke alarm. I guess the YouTube gods were smiling upon me on that day, but today not so much. Okay. Turn these guys. Now be careful with the rice specifically as you turn it. If a piece of rice decides to break off from the rest of the ball, it's going to be like a rocket in the oil, and it'll go splattering everywhere. So just kind of keep that in mind, and just keep that in mind for anything that you fry, whether it's the polpette or whether it's the zucchini flowers or what have you. Whenever you're frying something, always be mindful of splatter, because it happens. It's very difficult to control. So you always want to be on your toes. All right, just a few more moments here, and our first round of polpette should be ready. And again, like with all of our recipes, the full recipe and the full process will be down in the description. The measurements, everything, and the whole process. And then I'll explain the preparation process for the eggplant in there as well. Even though we didn't film it, you will have that direction down in the description area. And as always, likes, subscriptions are much, much appreciated. Also in the comments section, we appreciate if you ask any questions, provide any sort of like commentary. If you do decide to make the recipe, let us know how it turned out. Heck, if you make it and you have some pictures, upload those. We'll share those too. We're almost done here with this first batch, and then we'll show you how that looks when it's done, and then and then we'll fry up the rest of them. But we really appreciate the support you've given us here at Forno and Forum. We're just trying to have a little fun in the kitchen and share some recipes from my parents, my family. Eventually we'll be doing some pizza. My dad and I, we found a nice pizza dough recipe that we've been working on pizza dough for years, and we found a nice one online that's really good. It's got the pretty good ratios for Neapolitan style pizza, so your wood fired oven kind of stuff. It's really, really good. It's been my favorite so far that we've found, so that'll be coming up in a little bit. One of the non-family, well, it's a family recipe, but it's not Italian, that we'll be doing. And it's kind of outside the realm of Italian. We'll be doing a goulash recipe, which is one of my family's favorite recipes that my mom makes. Obviously, it's not Italian by any means. I'm pretty sure the variation that she makes is a Hungarian goulash. And when we do that episode, I plan to have a special guest, a good friend of mine, Grant Sabo. He's Hungarian, and he loves him some goulash, and he shared with me a portion of his grandmother's recipe for goulash. Specifically, there's a Hungarian dumpling, and I think it's pronounced gambosh, but I'll have to double check with my friend Grant, and he'll be on with us when we do that episode, but that'll be featured on here too. Okay, I think our polpette are just about done. The rice could use another little turn, but the eggplant is for sure ready to go. And obviously the eggplant and the rice will require less time than the carne, or the meat, because you're not working with meat and you don't have to worry about rawness and things like that. The rice and the eggplant are already fully cooked. Okay. Okay. Get you guys a peek at these. Okay. So right in front there, we have our polpette di carne. To the right, it's our polpette di melanzane. And in the back here, it's our polpette di riso. And then, like I mentioned, I'm going to finish up frying up the rest of these. And then once everything is done, we'll circle back, show you all of them done, and give you a few more pointers on things you can do or how you can use the polpette. But in the meantime, I'm going to finish frying these guys up, and I'll be right back. All right, welcome back. We have all of our polpette done. We have our polpette di riso, our polpette di melanzane, and then we have our polpette di carne, all done and fried up. As we mentioned, the recipe for all three of these is pretty much the same. The only difference between the rice and the eggplant and the meat is that the eggplant and meat have parsley. Other than that, the recipes are identical with the exception of the base ingredient. So to recap, it is a half a cup of freshly grated Parmesan cheese. It is a teaspoon of salt, teaspoon of black pepper, 1 fresh garlic clove per recipe, 2 eggs, 2 whole eggs, and then a quarter cup of breadcrumbs. Don't worry, all of the ingredients and all the instructions will be down below in the description section. One little note in regards to the eggplant and the rice. You'll have to cook the eggplant in advance. Like I said, I peel it, I boil it with a little bit of salt in the water, and then let it cool, and then smash it. You also want to make sure you want to drain as much of the liquid as possible from the eggplant. For the rice, just follow the instructions in the box to cook your rice, and that'll need some time to cool as well. And then obviously you want to mix all the ingredients together to make your various mixture for the various polpette. Again, this is a staple in our house. One of the with the exception of the melanzane, we don't make that one too often, but my aunts in Italy do make that quite a bit. They made it for me this past summer, and it was very tasty, and I decided to find a recipe for myself and share it with you guys. Again, as always, thank you so very much for tuning in. The recipe, the directions, everything will be down below in the description section. I'd appreciate if you could like the video, subscribe, and of course share with your friends. And then if you do decide to make either of these or all three, please report back, mention in the comments which ones you made, what you liked, what you tweaked. Did you add more salt, less salt, more garlic? How'd you fry it up? But yeah, well, again, thank you so much for tuning in. And then we'll just give you a quick look here at the polpette di riso and the polpette di melanzane. And last but not least, the polpette di carne. Again, thank you so much. This has been another episode of Forno and Forum. My name is Nat Garofalo. Thank you so very much for tuning in. We appreciate your likes. We appreciate your subscriptions. We appreciate your comments, and we hope that we can see you on our next episode of Forno and Forum. Thank you.